Welcome to Youpin Stock Trend Prediction channel. So in this video, you will just need to spend about 5 minutes to learn how to earn $5 to $30 per share. And if you know this, stay tuned. If you know this kind of tips, basically you know the secret how to potentially earn that type of profit or prevent loss. Right now, I will use a Tesla as an example. So this is a Tesla daily chart. Each vertical line is the OHLC bar chart. It's the actual real-time fluctuation of the Tesla stock price in that day. And today is March 29th, 2025. This is yesterday's, the last Friday's actual fluctuation of the stock price, and this kind of trend lines are the Youpin prediction model, prediction trend lines. That's effective resistance and the support. That's basically the momentum weighted. This kind of effective resistance or support will imply the actual high, potential high and low of that stock price, and it depends on if it will have the upward trend or downward trend, and then depends on the opening price, and then you will also know if the fluctuation range of the stock price. So for this day it's opened above this major blue support line. So generally, if it's opened above this major blue support line, it has a strong increasing momentum. And then you see this stock price on that day, it increased almost to the top of yellow trend line and even break off. So if it break off, that means it have a strong increasing momentum. And then the stock price didn't fully drop, and then that means it will have a potential to increase even more next day. And the next day it opened high and opened exactly above this top yellow trend line. So if it's opened actually above or on the top of this top yellow trend line, that happened rarely, but if it happens, that implies it has a very strong increasing momentum, and basically it increased all for the whole day. And if you see this from this low price around $236 increase to the top of $248 on that day, that's about $12 of increase. Next day, if it went to increase to this $278 compared to this price $236, that's almost increased by about $40. So basically, it fluctuated between this support trend line and the yellow trend line. So the next day, when it increased to such a high price, and generally it deviated from the top yellow trend line too much, so the next day it still have a tendency to drop it down to the blue support line. So you see next day when it opened on this yellow trend line, and it dropped to the bottom major blue trend line, and then when it dropped to this major support line, and then it still have a tendency to increase. So it has a reversal. Stock price continue to increase up to this top yellow trend line. So when it fluctuated among these yellow trend lines and the blue trend lines, generally the top yellow trend line is still a high major resistance, and it's a high, so it started to decrease on the next day. So the next day when it opened on, or actually a little bit below this major support line, but it has a tendency to drop. When it started to drop, it will drop it down at least to this bottom blue trend line when it break off, and then have a tendency to drop it even more. So compared to this price, high price $286, if you know it's already at a high price, and then you can potentially prevent the loss between this $286 and this $270. So it's additional about $17 drop. So you can prevent this kind of loss. And then if you purchase on the and keep this stock around this price range, $269 or $270, the next day started open a little bit high, and then it still continues to increase and even break off this top yellow trend line and increase to a high price of around $291. So it's about from this price around $267 to this $290. So it's still about more than $26 of increase of price rise. If you check all this kind of daily fluctuation on this daily chart, when it drops down to this blue support line, for example, for this day around $222, so you will have more potential to earn money because this is at the low price. And the next day, when it opened above this major yellow trend line, that means it has a strong increasing momentum, and then it increases even up to this top yellow trend line. So comparative price at this low price around $222. If you buy 100 shares of Tesla around this $221 and sell it at this top yellow trend line around $240, so you will earn $20 per share just in one day or 2 days within the next day. So basically the stock price just fluctuate between this top yellow trend line and the bottom blue trend line. So it fluctuates. So if you continuously think about this kind of a fluctuation in a cycle within 1 or 2 days, a couple of days. So it basically, for example, from this day, from this major resistance of the major yellow trend line, and it will continuously drop and have a tendency to drop, and then the next day additionally drop down to this price. So if you short 100 shares of Tesla around this $250 and covered around this $223, that's still around $27 of profit. And so and also you can also prevent loss if you don't hold any stock during this time frame. And you can also see these trend lines are slowly downward, so that means it has a decreasing trend. And then in this time frame, the trend lines are upward, so that means it has a tendency to increase the stock price. So if you know this kind of trend lines, the actual fluctuation of the stock price are among this top and the bottom support and the resistance, are among this top yellow trend line, resistance line, and the bottom blue support line. So, and also if you know this kind of trends, so basically you can manage it to earn more profit. And this is a daily chart. Each day the Tesla's stock price may fluctuate between like $10 or $15, among even up to $30 per day. So this is each day's fluctuation. If you zoom it in, and basically you will see this kind of fluctuation, and you see this kind of when it hit this kind of a trend line, it started to have a price reversal. And so this kind of trend lines are for the daily chart, and even for, you see, for this one, it went to increase to above this top yellow trend line, it still have a very strong increase in momentum at that day, but the next day it will still drop down to this blue trend line. So it's still, if you consider this is a cycle from the high to low between these 2 days, you will still get a price range. of maybe like around $20. So this is for daily chart. So even for 60 minutes charts or 15 minutes charts, you will still um, see this kind of fluctuation. So this is the 60 minutes chart, and even for 60 minutes chart, and you can see it's also fluctuate among this kind of top yellow trend line and the bottom blue trend line. For example, this 60 minutes when it's open here have a tendency to increase and up to increase to up to this top yellow trend line, and also and then it means it's a high price and it will drop down, and when it dropped down to this support line, and then the next day is still have a fluctuation. So, and for example, for this 60 minutes, when it opened here above this major yellow trend line, but you see this has a downward trend, and so even though it increased very close to this top yellow trend line, so it will still drop the stock price. And for this 60 minutes, it when it start to drop, it will always trying to find the bottom blue trend line. So it dropped all the way down to this blue bottom blue trend line, and even break off when it break off, and then it this kind of low, you 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 can just exactly predict the low. So we have some other models. We have some additional dots in some other models. So by right now we didn't include that kind of additional dots to predict the low for this in this model. So the next 60 minutes when it's opened a little bit high, but it still have a tendency to drop the retest the low for this 60 minutes. So when it dropped down to this one, didn't exactly drop it down to this bottom blue trend line, and then started to increase again, trying to reach the yellow trend line. So this is a 60 minutes chart. Even for 15 minutes charts, that's also have the similar trends. You can also see the fluctuation of stock price among these trend lines within 15 minutes. And even though, for example, when this opened below this top major yellow trend line, it will have a tendency to drop, even though it is slightly increased above this yellow trend line, but it will still continue to drop even down to this bottom blue trend line. And this price range of $263, when it dropped down to this $261, that's additional $2 of difference, and when it even dropped down to this 260, that's about $3 to $4 of difference. And for example, when you see this kind of price when it opened at the support blue trend line, when it started to increase, at least when it started to increase, it's trying to find the top yellow trend line, and when it still have a strong momentum, increasing momentum, it break off, and then this 15 minutes will increase, tended to increase to a higher price, but this trend lines are still not showing the upward trend. So that means this is a single price increase in this single 15 minutes. It didn't have a continuous increase. So it will, when it increase to this price $265, it continuously drop drop down to this closing price at this 15 minutes, $263. So that's still $2 of difference even for this 15 minutes fluctuation. So for example, when it dropped down to this blue support trend line next 15 minutes, it increased to this yellow trend line again. So basically it still fluctuate among this trend lines even within 15 minutes. 15 minutes is still within 60 minutes time frame. So when you see this kind of decreasing trend, then basically you will know for this 60 minutes time frame, it have a downward trend within that 60 minutes charts. When it have this type of relatively flat trend line, so it's just basically fluctuate within this kind of a trend lines within this 15 minutes. So basically, you can use this kind of a trend lines to monitor the fluctuation of the stock price, and then you will get a better chance and a better probability to earn more money and when it's increasing the stock price, or prevent the loss when it's decreasing the stock price. So if you are interested in this kind of analysis, you are welcome to subscribe European Stock Trend Prediction channel, or you can also reserve a Zoom meeting so we can talk about more details about this kind of models and analysis.